All right. So it's good to have you here. We are, just to kind of let you know, I like to let people know this is the second Sunday of the month, which is traditionally the Sunday when in our gathering we do communion, the bread and the cup. And so I like to kind of let people know so you can kind of prepare your hearts and your minds for that. We'll be doing that in the service. And we're now 1 week into the challenge, yeah? Yeah, Eat This Book Challenge. How you guys doing? Great. Spontaneous applause, even. That's great. So this is good. So this is a challenge to our whole community what's the goal? What's the goal of this Eat This Book Challenge? We're challenging people to read through the Bible in 2012, but is that the goal? That's not the goal. What's the goal? Remember? The goal is very simple. The goal is this every day. That's the goal. All right, so that we develop the habit. We become a community of people who are in the habit of being shaped by the Scriptures every single day. And so for some of us, we're already behind on the reading plan or whatever. So that's okay. It's okay. Right? Just pick it up again and keep on going. It's all right. It's going to drive type A people totally crazy. You know what I mean? I didn't check the box for that day or whatever. Who cares? You know what I mean? Like, doesn't matter. This is about forming the habit. And so that as the year comes, we become people shaped by the Scripture, people of character, people of wisdom, people of joy, and people who are grounded in the story of what God is doing in the world. And so that's the goal. So we did this last week, but we wanted to do it again this week because we know not everyone was here last week. In your bulletins, or you saw little tables out there as you guys came into the different rooms. There's an insert here in the bulletin, a little Eat This Book insert. And we want to give everybody a chance to participate and let us know if you are participating in the Eat This Book Challenge. So you see a little piece of paper here, and you can tear it off halfway. And if you're all in, I'm going to eat this book. It says, if you're going to eat this book, then let us know. Give us at least your name. And if you'd like, we would love to send out kind of a little encouragement throughout the year and so on. Give us your email too, and we'll send you a few notes through the year. So there's boxes at the exit of whatever room you're in here, in east side or the other rooms, and you can put that in the box at the end of the service when you guys leave. If you turn in and let us know that you're doing Eat This Book, your name will be entered in a raffle to win one of 10 ESV English Standard Version study Bibles. So not everyone's going to do it, right? So, but this is also a quick note. This a few Eat This Book announcements here. So I've been talking to lots of people. I've been checking out the Blackhawk Facebook page. Lots of people with lots of questions, like the Bible is really weird. Okay? It's really bizarre. So I cannot encourage you more strongly. Get a study Bible of some kind, or a one-volume Bible commentary. We have some recommended stuff on our website. And you're going to be lost half the time, and it's going to be frustrated. And so the study Bible that I'm recommending is this one that we're giving away. ESV Study Bible. You're in about $25-$30 if you get it online. And this thing's a Cadillac, man. It's so all these great features, notes, commentary, maps help you understand what it is that you're reading. So don't go it alone. Get a study Bible, and it will really transform your experience if you're doing the Read the Bible Challenge. One last thing is we teamed up, as we talked about, with YouVersion, which is an online web-based Bible for computers and smartphones. And it's really great. God bless them for what they're doing, making the Bible available. They have not made the most user-friendly application, however. So if you didn't start the plan on your phone or computer, if you didn't start on January 1, like sign up for it that day, and you want to sign up for it now later or throughout the year, and you want to be in sync with the pace of the whole church as we read through, it's extremely complicated, we've discovered. So if you go to our website, you can download a little PDF with colorful how-to steps. And there's a lot of steps because, well, God bless them. They just make a user-friendly website. So there you go. So I won't try and explain it all here, but there are directions for how to sign up for the plan and get your smartphone or your computer synced so you can do that. Sound good? Great. Okay, good. Excellent. All right. I invite you to get out your Bibles and turn with me to page 1 or it might be page 2 in your Bibles, depending in Genesis chapter 1. We are continuing on in this series that we're starting off here called the Torah, first 5 books of the Bible. Torah is the name of these first 5 books in Jewish tradition. It's a Hebrew word that just means teaching or instruction. And to give us kind of an angle or point of entry into these first chapters of the Bible, let me tell you a story and show you a picture of a guy here. This guy's name is Stanley Milgram. Stanley Milgram, and you've probably never heard of him. He was a professor of sociology at a few different universities, Yale, Harvard, City University of New York, and he did a very famous experiment, though, in the late 1960s. He was interested in studying what we today call social networks, the ways that the relational networks of any given person or community of people overlap throughout the whole of the world. And he was convinced of what he called small world theory, that the more the human population expands and explodes, the smaller the world gets. Because the relational density of cross lines and relationships actually becomes more complex, and we're all more interwoven than we were before. And so he did this experiment. He sent out hundreds of letters to random people all over the United States. And in the letter was the name of another random person in the city they lived in. And the instructions of the letter were, send this letter on to whoever you think might know this person, or might know someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows this person. And he wanted to know the degrees of separation between any two random people in the United States. And so he got hundreds of letters out, he got all the data back, and so on. He crunched the numbers, and you probably are familiar with this, at least with the phrase, right? How many degrees of separation between any two people? 5.5. But he rounded up to 6. So 6 degrees of separation. And this is kind of a famous idea. There's been movies, there have been books written about this, and so on. And this is a very powerful idea. The more people there are, the world gets smaller, because the density of the interconnections of your friend, of a friend, of a friend, of a friend, of a friend, is all interwoven. Our lives are much more connected and overlapping than we even realize. So just a few months ago, a month and a half ago, in November, a new version of the Small World Experiment was done. Did you guys hear about this in the news? There was a little blip in the news in November. It's awesome. So awesome. So there's a group of researchers who teamed up with Facebook, who have a slightly larger pool of people to study, right? Like 721 million people to study. And so this was the result right here. It's from New York Times. The experiment took 1 month. The researchers used a set of algorithms developed at the University of Milan to calculate the average distance between any two people by computing a vast number of sample paths among Facebook users. They found that across the world, the average number of links from one arbitrarily selected person to another was 4.74. In the United States, where more than half of people over 13 are on Facebook, it was just 4.37. The world's gotten smaller since the late 1960s. Isn't this amazing? Did you guys hear about this in the news? I think this is just incredible. This is just incredible. Now, this doesn't mean you're best friends with 4 people and then that's the whole world. It's just acquaintances, whatever, relationships, people you work with, live by, whatever. This is amazing. Our lives are much more interconnected than we realize. The decisions that I make, what I do with my life, doesn't just affect me. The ripple effect is very, very small, actually. And it just goes out. And what this tells us, the implications are pretty staggering then. What it means is that we're all much more closer. We're all much more connected. It's like we're one human family. This is what this idea, the small world. And this is actually not a modern idea. This is modern researchers putting numbers to this idea. But this idea, one human family, all interconnected, and so our fates and our futures all interconnected. This is an ancient idea. This is a biblical idea. And it's at the core of the worldview that the Scriptures are trying to help us see, especially in these first chapters of the Bible. So why don't you open your Bibles with me. We're going to explore the small world of the early chapters of Genesis. So the story begins. This will be my quick summary of Genesis 1. God makes a great piece of real estate and gives it to these godlike creatures. And we're introduced to them in verse 27 of chapter 1. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female both reflect the image of God. He created them. What's the first thing God does to the humans? Verse 28, what's he do? He blesses them. He gives them a blessing and said, be fruitful, increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea, the birds of the sky, over every living creature that moves on the ground. So again, my way of paraphrasing this would be, go for it. Have a blast. Just go. Make more humans, make communities and neighborhoods and music, and use the earth and its resources to flourish. Just go for it. It's a blessing. This is the creation commission for humanity as they go out and as they spread. Just go. It's blessing. It's the blessing as humans spread. But very quickly, we're told, as Chris walked us through these chapters last week, something goes terribly wrong. And that's the story of chapter 3. There is the presence of evil in this good world. And this is represented by this character of the snake in Genesis chapter 3. Where did evil come from? It doesn't say. It's just there. And this presence of evil is tempting to the first humans. And so they give in to the doubt of the trustworthiness of the Creator. They give in to the desire for autonomy and independence. And so it's precisely what happens. And so, there's the whole thing of the fruit and so on. You're like, well, it's weirdo. But the message of the story is very clear, right? They were asked to trust. They were asked to obey. And they chose selfishness. They chose sin instead. They think they know what's better. And the whole thing just begins to fall apart, right? So what happens to the first marriage when sin and selfishness enters the picture? In Genesis chapter 3, if you read through it this week, you get the first marital spat, right? So you get the first blame shifting. She did it. No, he did it. This kind of thing. And the marriage fractures. And this principle begins. You've maybe heard it before with Las Vegas. What happens in Las Vegas should stay in Las Vegas. But does it really? Probably not. What happens in Genesis 3, does it stay in Genesis 3? Tragically, no. Nope. And so we turn the page to Genesis 4, and we have a story of two brothers. And one, we're not told the roots behind the scenes of why God, likes Abel's offering but not Cain's, whatever. That's not the point of the story. The point of the story is, what is Cain going to do with his jealousy for his brother? He's tempted, just like his parents. What's he going to do with his temptation and his anger? He gives in, and he murders his brother. So what's happening here, the brokenness of the human heart passes on, it spreads to the next generation. And he murders his brother. So what happens from there? Well, Cain, he goes out, he's banished from the land, and he gets married. Now, for most of us, that raises just a huge question, because we're like, to who? So I thought he's only the third human on the planet. You know what I mean? Like, who does he get married to? This is so bizarre. Okay, let's just stop right here. So let's just be honest. If you're doing the Eat This Book Challenge, you read through these early chapters of Genesis. These are some of the weirdest stories in the world. Can I get an amen? This is just weirdo, right? So what? It's just weird, talking snakes and people appearing out of nowhere or whatever. And you have the flood and people living for a super long time. What is going on here? Okay, and if, again, you look at the Blackhawk Facebook page, there's all these great questions up there about this. A couple things of what's going on here. First thing is, reading the Bible is a cross-cultural experience. We need to get this, right? So it was not written to 21st century Westerners, right? It's not written to us in our language and our ideas and our ways of thinking about the world. We're jumping into another culture. You're going to somewhere where they speak a different language and drive on the other side of the street, right? And an immature response is to say, what is it? It doesn't make any sense. It's stupid. What is this? So that's immature. A mature response in a cross-cultural setting is you be humble, right? You're patient. Okay, I'm not going to figure everything out quickly, and you need to be ready to learn. I don't know everything. This is another way of thinking about the world. I need to learn and get into this world. And so when we step into the Bible, and especially when we step into Genesis chapters 1 through 11, specifically, these are stories that are using language, ideas that are very common in the ancient Near East when the Israelites spent 400 years in slavery where? In Egypt. Where did Israel's ancestors come from, as we'll see today? Where did Abraham come from? From ancient Babylon. And so I think Genesis 1 through 11, these early chapters, they are not written to give some sort of objective, chronological history of early human civilization. If that's what you're looking for, you're going to be sorely disappointed, because there's so many questions left hanging. Like, where did Cain's wife come from? You know what I mean? Like, the author's not concerned with giving us all those details. The author has a message, and he's telling us that message in the language that would have made sense. I think of Genesis 1 through 11 as an ancient Israelite, Egyptian, and Babylonian go into a bar, and they start to have a conversation about, like, where did all this come from? What is going on around here? Why are things the way that they are? And there you go. That's what's happening here. And so the author chooses very selectively what information he's going to tell you as he tells the story. And he just leaves everything else with question marks. He doesn't care about that. He has an agenda, the author does, and he has a message he wants you to get. And the message is very clear. It's very clear. What happened in Genesis 3 did not stay in Genesis 3. The virus of sin and brokenness is spreads, hops generations. Now what happens? So in chapter 4, Cain, he's banished. He finds this mystery wife, and then he goes and builds a city, right? And named Enoch. A city for who? Again, it's like there's people around all of a sudden, you know? And he builds a city. And this city becomes the origins of culture and music and metalworking and animal domestication. And you're like, yes, the humans, they're doing it. They're flourishing. This is great, right? Right? But then we're given a little snapshot into the life of this city. And we're given this little guy named Lamech, right? It's weird. It's weird. This guy named Lamech. And so in verse 19, we're told how broken of a human being he is. He treats women like property. He's the first polygamist in the Bible. He accumulates wives like property, and that is not what God had in mind from Genesis chapter 1. And even worse, he murders a young boy, he says, just for like hitting him, kicking him in the shins, you know? And he says he just killed him on the spot. He said, you thought Cain was bad? I'm 77 times worse. That's what he says. So what's happening here? It's spreading. It's now hopped. Generations now spreading through the human family. The selfishness, the sin, the virus of human brokenness. You look at chapter 6, verse 5 with me. Now it's not just Cain, it's not just Lamech, it's everybody. Verse 5, the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth. Every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was evil all of the time. It's spreading. Everyone's like this now. And so God brings an act of justice against human wickedness. This is the story of the flood. But he shows grace. He saves a remnant out of his act of justice, and he starts over. It's like a new human family again from Noah and his descendants. And how does Noah do? What's the first thing Noah does? He gets off the boat. He plants a vineyard. Yeah, he makes wine, which is great. You know, have a glass with dinner. He has way too many glasses after dinner, though, right? He gets hammered drunk, and he gets naked in his tent, right? The Bible's R-rated. Have you realized this by now? So he gets naked in his tent, and then his son, Ham, comes in. And the author's very careful with his wording. He just says something shameful happened. And we're like, what is this? Spreading. And then Noah and his family, they begin to spread. The humans spread, and the virus of sin and brokenness spread, and so on. It culminates in chapter 11, right? And we get the nations of the world come together, one language and common speech, and they settle where? In the plain of, what's it say? Of Shinar. This is ancient Babylon. And what do they do? This is great. So what are the human family, what have they got in their hands now? They've got technology. Genesis 11 is about technology. They have this new technology, verse 3, called the brick. Brick. Because see, stones, they're not all the same shape, right? And you can't stack things very high because it's not very solid and secure and so on. But bricks, holy cow, man, we can mass produce these things, and they're all the same size. We can stick them together with tar. We can build things quicker and faster, higher, stronger than we ever had before. We can remake the landscape according to our own desires. And so what do? They build a city. This is verse 4. They say, come, let's build a city with a tower. And what's this tower going to do? It's going to reach up to the heavens. We'll make a name for ourselves. Reach out, right up to the heavens, to God's doorstep, right? We'll show the gods, right? We can go right up to them with our technology. Look how modern people we are with our technology. Who needs the gods, right? We'll make a name for ourselves. Genesis 11. I can't think of any culture I know of that has this attitude. Anyhow, so what happens? God brings an act of justice against human arrogance, and he scatters them. And so then what happens? Well, out of the scattering, we're introduced to a family in verse 27 of chapter 11, the family of a guy named Terah. Now, let's just stop right here. Do you see the message? It's just right here. This is the spreading. The human family is very small, 4.7 degrees of separation. The virus of sin did not stay in Genesis 3. Hop generations, that's hopping cities, communities. Everybody's broken. Everybody's broken. And the world's a mess because of it. And so it just raises the question, what is God going to do? What's the Creator going to do to rescue and to save his world? And so in Genesis chapter 11, verse 27, this is why all those boring genealogies are in the book of Genesis. It's because the author's tracing a family line to the family through whom God's going to save the world. And we're introduced to them in verse 27. This is the account of Terah's family line. Terah became the father of who? Abram. Ding, ding, ding. There you go, Abram. This is the whole rest of the book of Genesis right here. We're introduced to the character, right? Abram. Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now he's named Abram right here, which means exalted father. His name's going to get changed to what? To Abraham, which means father of a multitude, which is more true than anybody realizes at this point. Right? Go down to verse 31. So Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Abram, and together they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. Now you see on a map here, Ur is in ancient Babylon. Right? Chaldeans is the people, it's Babylonians. So they go up to Haran, but they don't finish the trip down to Canaan. The weather's nice there, whatever, they decide to stay. So when they came to Haran, they settled and stayed there. Let's just stop for a second here. Who cares? Like, who cares about these people, and their vacation or whatever? Like, what? Why does this matter? The world's falling apart. You know what I mean? The virus of sin and brokenness is spreading. The whole human family is caught in this sticky web of sin and selfishness. And why do I care about these people? So this is first lesson in the God of the Bible, right? He works through random people and ordinary circumstances. And people going on vacations or settling and moving here and there in relationships and families, this is how God works. The virus of sin and brokenness spread through the human family, and God's going to do something new with the human family. And what is that thing? Well, chapter 12, verse 1. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land that I'll show you." So he wants Abraham to finish the journey and to go down south to the land of Canaan. Why? Why? "I will make you into a great nation, and I will do what? Bless you." I'll bless you. And our minds are ringing, yes, that's exactly what humanity needs, right? Humanity was given the blessing, and what did we do with it? We turned it into a curse of brokenness and sin and selfishness. And so what is God's response to the virus spreading throughout humanity? He says, I'm going to start a new family of blessing that will spread salvation and blessing throughout the human family. I'll bless you. I will make your name great. Does that ring any bells? What did the people of Babylon say? Make a name for ourselves. And God humbles the arrogant. But he exalts this no-name wanderer, nomad. Abraham, make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I'll bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. He's going to protect Abram. Why? Why? The key is right here at the end of verse 3. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Some of your translations might have all the families of the earth will be blessed through you. And that is spot on, because that's the idea here, right? How did sin and selfishness spread through the families? There's just 4.7 degrees of separation, right? It just, there it goes. It's like a virus. And so what is God going to do in response? He's going to start a new family that's grounded in grace and blessing And why does he choose Abram? Because he likes Abram's handsome or something like that? Is he good looking? Like, why? Does he like the people of Israel more than anyone else? No. Why does he choose Abram and his family, Israel, that's going to come from him? To bless everyone. He blesses one to bless the many. Right? He's saving one to bring salvation to the many. That's how God works in the world. We think like equal opportunity. You know what I mean? We think God should parachute salvation down for everybody individually or whatever. And that's not how God works. He works through people, through things spreading through the human family, through relationships. That's how sin started, and that's how blessing and salvation is going to get started too. These verses are crucial to understanding the storyline of the whole Bible. You don't get Genesis chapter 12, you won't get anything that comes after. And you certainly won't get Jesus, because he saw himself as fulfilling this promise. So think of how this works out. Maybe visually this might help. So the book of Genesis, it begins with God, of course. And in chapters 1 through 11 of Genesis, it's the story of God and the whole world. Right? And it's the story of the spreading of the virus, of the brokenness of humanity. But here then in chapter 12, it's like a new storyline begins. Just this random guy. Twos are hard. Okay, there we go. So it's the story of Abraham and the people of Israel that are going to come from him, right? And so, you're going to, everything that follows here from the rest of the Old Testament is about God and the people of Israel. And you're like, why do I care about these people? You know what I mean? To commit 700 pages of reading to them. You know what I'm saying? Like, why? What is this for? It's because what God is doing right here is his response to this story right here. Do you see this here? So this story is just left hanging. What is God going to do to rescue the world? And the story of the Bible is what God is doing. He chooses one family through whom somehow he's going to restore blessing to all nations. Sin and selfishness spread like a virus. God's starting a new virus, or like an antivirus or something. And it's the blessing of Genesis chapter 12. And it's going to spread. It's going to spread. Now, the problem, of course, is that the people of Israel are just as broken and screwed up as everybody else, right? And so it creates two problems now. Like, God is trying to rescue the world, and now he's got to rescue Israel all the time from the messes they're getting themselves into, right? And so that's why the Old Testament is so complicated and intense and involved, right? But that's the story. So the story comes to its culmination. The New Testament authors, and Jesus makes it very clear that it comes to its culmination in himself, in Jesus of Nazareth. And that on the cross, he bears in himself as Israel's king all of their pain, the implications of their foolishness, their sin, and their evil. But when Jesus of Nazareth comes, is it only to rescue his tribe? Answer? No. He's very clear. He's very clear. Especially it's highlighted in the Gospel of Luke that we'll read in September, it'll be early September, that he sees himself as bringing this story to its culmination too. What's happening at the cross is not meant to stay at the cross. It's meant to spread throughout the whole world. What God's doing here is he's rescuing and he's redeeming, he's restoring and absorbing into himself all of the pain and the evil of this virus that is spread throughout the whole human family and throughout the people of Israel. This is how the story of the Bible fits together. It's Genesis chapter 12. God chooses one family through whom he's going to bring salvation and grace to the many. Does this make sense? This is how the Bible fits together. This is the antivirus. So it spreads. And so what a perfect Sunday for us at this point in our service and in our time together to reenact this moment of the story. This is how God solves the problem. He absorbs the painful, tragic results of the virus of sin into himself on the cross, and he defeats its power when he raises from the dead. And he makes the antivirus available to spread throughout a new humanity. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But let's just take some time in our gathering here to focus on the bread and the cup and on the moment of this cross and what God is doing for the world, but what God is doing for each of us on the cross. It's through the cross that you and I as people long in a galaxy far away, long time from these events, is that the cross where you and I get included into this story. What happened in Genesis 3 did not stay in Genesis 3. What happened at the cross was never meant to stay at the cross, was it? It's supposed to spread. It's the antivirus. And so the stories of immediately following Jesus' resurrection is his commission to his followers, right? And in the beginning of the book of Acts, he gives them a commission. And how many people is the home team that he starts with? It's like 120. 120. And that was on the other side of the planet 2,000 years ago. And here we are, right? This is spreading. And that's always been the plan, is that it spreads through people, through relationships, through families, through communities, moving, talking, living together. It's how sin and brokenness spread. This is how God's blessing and salvation is going to spread. And so the constant challenge you're going to have as you read through the Bible is this is about ancient people and far away. No, this is our story. We're a part of this story. And this is about what God is up to in the world and how he's invited us to play a role to share the blessing, to share. And who knows, the millions and billions of stories of the interconnections, 4.7 degrees of how God's salvation is spreading through us being faithful to share, to talk, to live. But that's how it goes. What would it be like to hear the stories of God at work behind the scenes? Let's listen, watch this story. It's kind of a sample of what it might look like. The mystery of how God is at work in the world is that he does it like this. Through people, through relationships. And so what happened at the cross was never meant to stay there. It's meant to spread and spread through the human family. And what God, if you're a follower of Christ, what God is doing in your life to change you, to transform you, to heal you, that is not meant to stay contained within your life. It is meant to be shared. It is meant to spread. And so what that means for you, I don't know, but you and I are part of the story, and this is what it means to be a part of this family that God has created, is to share with our words, to share with our actions, how we treat people. What does that mean for you? That's the challenge of Genesis 12 to us today. Let's reflect on that challenge before we go.